Achewillow, Season 6, Chapter 14, Around the Achewillow Trees. I once saw an achewillow tree. Tall and shimmering, it grew out of a dead stump into luminescent glory one night. Branches by the thousands hung low, heavy with leaves and fruit and sorrows. It was a nightly vision of dread and hope, a hallucination from a tired mind. I once saw an impossible tree. Only in dreams, waking or not, could I conjure the trunk and bark of something I know not to exist. The legend told so many times as to lose its meaning. The story echoing over and over, forgetting itself, dulling its edge. In all my days here in Achewillow, seldom have I sought out the unthinkable. It's one thing to accept the magic inherent in this place, to embrace how everyone and everything walks the beaches of the supernatural, often without getting more than a spray of the ocean on their skin, but it's quite another to plunge right in, to brave the currents and glimpse what lurks beneath the surface. I saw the achewillow tree in a dream, a vision only glimpsed at a time when few things wish to be seen. Tonight, as the hours find me weak and weary, my judgment frayed, I walk into Achewillow Border Park with purpose in mind. How fortunate it is to have a place where one can walk into the seas of the subconscious, to break the surface of reality, to wade through mysteries. I need an impossible fruit to bake an impossible tart. Everything else in the recipe I can achieve, and normally the right ingredients, the proper technique, and a heaping spoonful of honest intent is enough to nudge reality one direction or another. Some realities are heavier than others, their weight pressing down so hard as to become immovable by even the most determined will. And so a resourceful witch turns to means outside herself. Do you never sleep? The voice cuts through the silence like another gust of cold wind, bracing but expected. At the edge of my peripheral vision, I can see his calm, pale face, wearing what could be a half-smile. Don't you ever change clothes? I ask. As with every time I see him, Patience is clad in a white hoodie, an outfit ill-suited to keeping him warm in such weather. He should be trembling, lips blue and quivering. I think you know me well enough to answer that question yourself. What are you doing here? Braving the cold, I take my hand out of my pockets, waving it over the large stump in the middle of Achewillow Border Park. How strange to have a village named after a tree and honor it with the cadaver of a once mighty specimen. I'm here for a miracle, I admit, hoping my meaning reaches him. Got any to spare? His laugh is as quiet and reposed as he is, not much louder than the snow falling around us. You do fours are all the same, aren't you? No wonder you all cook and bake. Always hungry, never quite satisfied with what's on your plate. Look around. An entire community of nothing but small miracles and subtle wonders. A life with spice and flavor and texture. Of all the people I've met, I would think that you, amongst all of them, would be the one most sated by this. Hungry for warmth, I stuff my hand back in my pocket. The coat, the scarf, the hunch in my shoulders to shield myself from the wind all serve to hide my reaction. How dare he be so accurate in his assessment? But he's wrong about one thing. If Patience thinks it's my own belly I want to fill this night, then he's guessed astray. I'll take that as a no, I answer, smothering my frustration as best I can. He steps forward, walking slowly around the stump until he stands in diametric opposition to me. This way, we can't escape each other's eyes. I'm not used to talking to patients this way. Always, he takes a seat at my side, and we discuss things of the metaphysical in town. There's something intimidating about seeing him, upright, facing me. Not quite confrontational, but not as passive as I've gotten accustomed. "Take this without offense, Miriam," he says, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his hoodie. "But if I had miracles to hand out, I would not give them to a Dufour." The barb doesn't dig as deep as I would have thought. If the last few months have taught me anything, it's that not everyone thinks of my family as a blessing on the village. Some view the Dufour and their legacy as enemies, or at the very least volatile threats to be monitored. I doubt that Patience feels that way, but he must have his reasons to be reserved. Sitting on the balls of my feet, I brush a perfect layer of snow off the stump. My fingers brush the concentric circles, each marking the passage of a year before the tree was cut. I'll get no fruit from this. "I found greed," I say, perhaps changing the subject, perhaps an attempt to curry favor. Or at least, I think I found its next victim. A mirror to my actions, Patience crouches and clears part of the stump for himself. His movements are delicate and slow, as if he were afraid of waking the dead tree with his touch. That's good. A first step. If I can't have a miracle, can I at least have some candor? I'm running out of ideas how to beat these demons. If you have a solution, it would be nice of you to share. My attempt to read him is futile. Patience is completely absorbed by the tree, the rings within rings of petrified wood having worked some sort of hypnosis on him. I try to picture him, flaming sword in hand, standing tall against a demon of greed, ready and eager to strike down the foul creature and return it to the burning abyss from whence it came. But that's not him. Patience is short and slight, of indeterminate age, but certainly of no warrior lineage. He's more likely to wait out the storm than fight the clouds and thunder. Whatever his role in Achewillow, it is not fighting demons. That task falls on the politicians and the local small business owners. What a strange little town indeed. Suddenly, a smile paints itself on his face, as if a stray memory had wandered through his mind, the same way one might find a kernel of tasty food lodged between two teeth, a gross yet delightful reminder of a recent meal. "Do you remember the succubus?" My heart skips a beat. How could I forget? My sweet, broken Agnes. I swallow hard, fumbling for the right words. Of course I remember. To forget would be both sweet and sour, but equal parts impossible. "You made a friend of that one," he explains, not waiting for my answer. "Demons aren't always something to banish. Sometimes we have to learn to live with them, or at the very least, tame their nature." "Is that why you kept Envy?" Another smile. 2 in one evening. My mysterious friend is cracking, or I'm on a roll. I can't feel the tip of my fingers, the cold having sapped any residual heat from my extremities. I blow warm breath on my hands before pulling my scarf up. It's going to get even colder tomorrow. The whole town will be wrapped in mittens and toques and scarves. "The way you talk about demons," I add, "you'd think it was important they be destroyed." Standing up, he shrugs. Winter has no purchase on him. I look around to make sure he leaves tracks in the snow as he walks, wondering for the first time if patience is even real. "There will come a day when I get rid of him, but not for now. Envy and I aren't done with each other yet." The edge in his voice is something new for Patience. I've never heard so much as a crumble of hurry in him before. When he speaks of being done with envy, he sounds eager and mournful. So, I say, standing up in turn, make friends with greed? I don't even know where I would start with that. Slow and lazy, the leftovers of his smile lingering on his lips, Patience finishes circling the stump. His hands find his pockets again, and he stretches his shoulders before shaking off the accumulated snow. Where he started on my right, now he stands to my left, uncomfortably close and leaning in closer. Without warning and without permission, he whispers in my ear, an act that seems shockingly intimate for someone whose nature remains somewhat of a mystery. His breath, no warmer than the surrounding air, has the quality of spearmint, not in aroma, but in how crisp and clean it feels. No warmth emanates from his skin, but rather an aura of placid complacency. He whispers words so brief, yet I feel I could listen to him for hours. "Start at home," he says. "A cook such as yourself should have an easy time swallowing pride." The cognitive part of my brain sees the slight in his advice. There's no veiled insult, but a rather passive-aggressive jab at my behavior and personality. I should be hurt or furious, but instead, the statement hits me like a pleasant smell from a kitchen. The emotional part of me, unable to do anything more than listen and wait for more. "I'm not prideful," I counter, as soon as I'm no longer under the spell of his proximity. But my words are spoken to nobody but the falling snow. At this hour, even the strangest denizens of Achewillow Border Park have gone, driven home by either the weather or the final hours of the night. And patience is nowhere to be found, which is probably for the best. I have one more stop before I need to open the Achewillow Cafe again. The road to Fig's Orchard is a long one on foot under the best of conditions. On the warmest of pleasant days, it's a stroll down the rural roads of Achewillow, walking on the edge of what is and isn't the village proper. It's a journey familiar to me, one I've enjoyed under the setting sun and huddled beneath an umbrella, always with the promise of a cup of coffee and friendly conversation waiting at the end. None of that for me tonight. Wet snow weighs heavy underfoot, both a chore to stamp down with every step, yet unyielding when raising my boots. Cold bites down on my exposed flesh, a reminder of the fickle nature of winter. There's a solemn beauty to the white curtains that limit my view. The thick, lazy flakes fall straight for lack of wind, but catch what little light they can, plunging a lone pedestrian like myself into an isolating embrace. No sound can reach in or out, leaving me with my ragged breathing. Toes and fingers feel the nibbling of frost, a reminder that there will be no coffee and conversation waiting for me at 4 a.m. at Olivia's home. Because it isn't Olivia I'm going to visit, nor is it Henry. I arrive at Fig's Orchard to find it as one would expect this time of night. The porch light, a waning orange that is long to be seen, is the only sign of waking life. Every window is a dark mirror, reflecting a shadow version of the snowfall outside. Not a soul in sight. In an hour, perhaps 2, the Figs will get up. Olivia is an early riser, and Henry does most of his sleeping in the evening in front of an old television. In the spring, summer, and fall, they have an orchard to operate, but lifelong habits don't turn off for a season. Even without work to do, they'll be up. And I'll be long gone by then. The large warehouse, with the big letters F, I, and G painted in peeling white paint, looks down on me as I make my way to the back of the house. And there they are. An army of apple trees waits under the night sky. White spiral tree wraps are their uniform, and small colored flags are their standards. They wait in ranks for the season to pass, so that they may once again return to service. They, too, I leave undisturbed. Though they are of a wide variety, Cortland, Macintosh, Honeycrisp, pears, and whatever hybrid Olivia is experimenting with, it's a unique specimen I'm looking for this night. I was hoping the nakedness of the trees would make it easier to navigate the maze and find my quarry, but abundant snow and rising tension blur my view. It's a struggle not to get lost, let alone find one specific tree. The wind picks up, working to erase my steps and further freeze my skin. The urgency of success hurries my steps, but also tempts me with giving up. I'm just about to succumb, accepting this as my final warning from fate to stay away from the recipe on page 73, when I pick up a smell. It's both sweet like sorrow and salty as tears, but overwhelmingly, it is acrid like a campfire after rain. My heart climbs up in my throat, as it does when going down the slope on a roller coaster. It's not quite nausea, but a sick excitement or violent trepidation. I'm Miriam Dufour. Following a scent is no challenge for me, and the closer I get to the target, the stronger the smell and the more vivid the memory. This isn't my first visit to this hidden corner of the orchard. I've been here once before, on a warm summer day when I first found what I hope to see tonight. But the smell has already betrayed the disappointment that awaits. I kick snow in increasingly thick piles as I hurry to my destination. In turn, I'm furious at Olivia, devastated by the inevitable destruction of something precious and unique, and clinging to a desperate crumb of hope. There, in a clearing, I find it. Olivia's Achewillow tree. Or rather, what she was attempting to make into an Achewillow tree. To be honest, I don't know what I was expecting. With winter so well on its way, was I really hoping to find fruit hanging from those branches? If my understanding is correct, it is a magic tree, and that was surely the desperate thought I clung to. At this time of year, Olivia's experiment should have been but another naked trunk with bare branches. What I find is even less than that. The tree is no more, replaced instead by a shallow pit of accumulating snow. In the middle, the charred skeleton of a once living plant points to the sky, like a hand reaching towards a heaven at its time of death. I'm sure that if I were to dig out the snow, I would find only ash and dirt. There's nothing to do now but walk home and get the Achewillow ready to open. Except, it seems, for one last piece of business. "Didn't think you'd be up this early," I say, responding to the soft crunching of snow I hear behind me. "Honey," Olivia's voice cuts through the wind. "I've been looking out my window every hour, on the hour, for days now. You think I didn't know you'd come sneaking around?" Her voice is a tired mess of relief and worry, swirled together like the batter of marble cake, distinct but inseparable. "I need that fruit," I say, as firm as my weary throat can stand. "No, you don't. You think if Doris had a cure-all recipe, she wouldn't have tried to use it herself? I'm not like Doris. I don't do the small things. I do the spectacular, the bombastic. When I make a meal, it's to level cities, not just nudge at the edges here and there." She sighs, walking the few feet before standing next to me. I refuse to turn and look at her. Seeing Olivia's face, looking into her eyes as she talks to me, I'm afraid she'll manage to wear me down. "You poor child," she says after a deep breath. "I should never have tried to bring that abominable tree back from extinction. An Achewillow tree isn't proper witchcraft. It thumbs its nose at nature, and the village has had enough of that already." "I can handle it," I answer, determined. I don't mind bending nature to my will. I know you tried and it didn't work, but no offense, I'm a better cook. I can tame an Achewillow fruit, pour it into a recipe that will heal even the most terminal of disease. If you've kept any of these fruits, please let me have them. I'll show you miracles you never knew could exist. Hope swells, bolstered by her hesitation. She must have kept some of her Achewillow knockoff fruits, if only to continue her experiments. I just have to convince her of the necessity in letting me have one. Is this even about Nisha anymore? She asks, giving me her best disappointed mother frown. Or is this still about showing up that Ophelia girl? It can be both, I offer, thinking honesty to be the best policy. They go hand in hand, syrup to crepe. I can't have one without the other. My weak attempt at levity goes unappreciated. Instead of a warm chuckle and maybe surrender to my plight, I get nothing but silence. Long and uncomfortable, like wet denim on cold legs, it clings. I hang on to the thread that maybe she's considering my point of view, but Olivia remains quiet until even that part of my mind capitulates. I'm glad I burned it then, she says, as much a confession as anything. Some things are better left dead. With nothing else to add, and a day of her own to get started, Olivia turns on her heels and starts her way back to the house. But I won't have it. You're letting her die, I say, alien anger guiding my voice. She stops, but only long enough to turn and give me that look. The one that says she's ready to let this one slide. The one where she'll pretend I didn't say the thing I said for the benefit of our friendship. But pride will not allow me to take the hint. I can save her. I can save so many people. Just let me have the fruit. Darling, she says, forcing down an anger I didn't know Olivia capable of. You think you're the first one to believe they can use that fruit without paying a price? I tried. Hell, you've got a whole recipe that proves your ancestor gave it a shot. Trust me, dear, if a Dufour, or anyone else, was able to do any good with an Achewillow fruit, it'd still be getting done today. There's no such thing as an Achewillow tree, and pray it stays that way. With that final paraphrasing of the unofficial town motto, Olivia turns around one final time, disappearing between veils of falling snow. No offer to drive me home, no coffee, not even a good night. My feet were wet and numb by the time I decide to move them again. Enough snow had melted that it seeped over my boots, soaking my socks and freezing my skin. The road home would be long indeed, dragging behind me a heavy failure. I think I can mend this fence with Olivia later. As I walk under the gaze of those big white letters again, I think about how my friend was less angry than hurt. That's when the wind picks up. And if it wasn't for that wind, I wouldn't hear the sound of the warehouse door, slamming back and forth, caught in a series of gusts. Without hearing the door, I wouldn't remember the key to the warehouse padlock on my keyring, a souvenir from that summer Annabelle, Stefan, and I had to work here, labeling bottles for hours. And without that key, I wouldn't be tempted to go snoop around the warehouse in one final, probably futile attempt to get what I came for. When I arrive back at the cafe, the snow has finally stopped. An omnipresent blue hue has replaced the whiteout, mixing all colors into a uniform cold tint. Seeing the door of my beloved Achewillow, all I can think of is stepping into that warm kitchen and scalding my fingers on the side of hot plates and steaming bowls, anything to shake off the chill that's made my bones its home. It's going to be a long day, but one I finally feel equipped to deal with. The only lingering concern for now is how I'll look on camera, having had no sleep and no time to get clean. Hopefully, I can get a minute to spruce up, or maybe there's enough footage from previous days that my face won't be needed on camera. Speaking of cameras, it looks like I won't be alone turning the key on the door this morning. I recognize him for his stature first, the beard confirming my assumption when I get close enough. "Bert?" I ask, naked concern on my shivering breath. "What are you doing here?" Hands dug deep in his pockets and elbows near his chest, he dances around from one foot to the other, also trying to fight off the bitter cold. It looks like he showered, getting the last of the blood from his beard that was too awkward to clean. His neck is bare, vulnerable to the elements, but bereft of an offending scarf. "Spoke to Gagnon during the night," he says, excited by the news. "He's giving me one more chance, though he's having me pay the insurance premium on the camera." "Here," I say, opening the door. "Get inside where it's warm." We both have hot drinks in hand, with fresh croissants on the way. So many questions, but caffeine and warmth take precedent on a morning like this. Hot coffee is the whetstone of the dulled mind, after all. "He shouldn't be asking you to pay anything," I finally say. "An accident's an accident." Bertrand sips greedily from his mug. I notice his gaze shifting often to the window and door, waiting for someone. I want to think it's Annabelle he's hoping to see again, but something in his nervous glances betrays more fear than shyness. It's Gagnon's arrival that worries him, or something even more frightening, somehow. "Do you remember anything?" I ask, careful not to crack any eggs with my question. "From last night, I mean." He shakes his head, grinning with shame as he does so. Bert's been scratching at his beard and polishing his coffee at record speed. Not that I'm any slouch myself in that department. "I don't even remember knocking over the camera. I think I got a nosebleed during the night. Not gonna lie, Miriam, I'm a little worried. My dad died of a ruptured aneurysm when I was 12, and Grandma passed away from brain cancer before I was even born." He taps his head, jittery and concerned, the very gesture restrained, as if it could cause another episode. "We've got a history. It's always brain stuff in my family. You think I should make a doctor's appointment?" What am I supposed to answer? "Don't worry about it, Bert. Nothing's wrong with your cerebrum. It's just the magic. Sorry you got caught up in a fight between witches, but no need to seek medical attention." I err on the side of caution. "It's probably nothing," I say, refilling his mug. "But why take chances? It's not a bad idea to get checked out, if only for your peace of mind." He nods, half convinced. I've seen that look. The expression of a man trying to placate someone trying to placate him. One of those many social stalemates I'm so proficient at getting myself into. I would have preferred if he did remember what happened, though. To get the identity of the greed demon. To learn what it is that Ophelia did to chase the creature away. There was a lot of blood. Human-looking blood. "Say," I ask, eager to change topics, "mind watching the door for me? I have some stuff to prepare in the kitchen before Gagnon arrives and we have to start production." He nods, still distracted. What could be going through his mind, I wonder? Vicky was the same way after we extracted envy from her. No memories, just the vague aftertaste of trauma. When I come out of the kitchen, it's with a renewed sense of accomplishment. While not exactly pleased that Bertrand is in no position to help with my demon problem, I've come to terms that it is probably best for him to remember nothing. That his imagination filled in the blanks is also an agreeable bonus. Gagnon isn't long in coming in. I remain in awe of how much command he has over the spaces he occupies. A non-negligible part of me yearns for his departure, if only so that I can reclaim the Achewillow for myself. It's not only his invasion of the dining room that offends, but his very attitude. and how, while he remains, I struggle to hold the title of best cook in Achewillow. This is my small pond. Let me be the bigger fish. Though, if all goes well, by the time this day is done, I'll have perhaps shown him up a little. "All right," he says, without bothering with any other pleasantries. "I can confirm that Stefan will be here at any moment. Bertrand, stop wasting time and prep the camera. Miriam, when does the little girl usually come in?" "Pardon?" I wonder aloud, interrupted as I attempt to tease my hair into something presentable. "I have no idea when Anais brings her daughter here. What is it to you, anyway?" I break from looking at myself in the brass tubes of the coffee machine, the reflection working overtime to make me look my worst. Gagnon looks annoyed by my answer. Being denied is not part of his vocabulary of responses. "Well then, I hope you can contact the woman. Her child is integral to this production." "I'm sorry," I scoff, insulted by the idea. "I thought this video was about the Achewillow and me." What's going on here? I know this feeling well. Mother knows I got acquainted with it thoroughly during my last months in Montreal. It became a daily meal for me. The full taste and texture of it is familiar as my own cooking. Wounded pride and jealousy, but turned towards a child this time. What's wrong with me that this is my first reaction? "The video is about turning a profit, Miriam, the means of which rely on careful choices and investments. It's a bitterly competitive market out there, with viewers as ruthless as the algorithm that finds them, both equally fickle in their taste. If you want this video to be a success, which you should, you'll do what you can to support my vision." Grappling with my own feelings on the topic, I grit my teeth and busy myself with further preparations. Like coffee being brewed, customers will be trickling in soon, ready for their cups. "I'll see what I can do," I lie, hopefully out of integrity rather than greed for the spotlight. Particular care is given to the display, even though it is a struggle to fill it back up. I had dreams of perfectly feathered millefeuille, a decadent eclairs, but as much as those would have filled the empty slots, my time has been rather too occupied. Especially with so much of my morning's baking dedicated to special delights not meant for the general public. It's tempting to let the macaron sprite loose and allow its strange conjuring to add color to my display, but the day is promising to be chaotic enough already. And there is no better harbinger of chaos than the morning rush. They arrive in droves, each bringing with them the cold nibbling of December's touch, the ring of the door chime accompanied by both a paying customer and a sharp touch to the outside. One by one, or two by two, they file in. Ian is first in line, flanked by two of his Pilvist followers, and Michael is not far behind, his paint-splattered overalls covered by an equally stained winter coat. Mayors Byrne and Lagacé grace us with their stern presence. I try to read the latter's demeanor, to know if Annabelle's thievery was discovered, but no one sports a poker face quite like Veronique Lagacé. Pat and Emile, Detective Lamore, and even the elusive Julia Remington file in, demanding their usuals. Business is good, and Bertrand swallows it all with his camera. Gagnon does some narration and bothers the customers for their impressions of various baked goods. I can't hear the conversations, but I also can't imagine anything but the most glorious praise. These aren't just my customers, they're my fellow Achewillow citizens. In almost any other circumstance, I would be supping on this nectar with abandon. This is the production at its best and easiest. I do my job, soak in praise and attention in equal portions, and worry about nothing. Except, worry is the main course, not the side dish. Not one of my customers walks in unprepared for the cold. They all have winter coats of various brands, styles, and effectiveness, of course, but they all sport a brand new, fresh for the season, wool scarf. Some have matching mittens and toques, too. And they linger. People who would usually grab their coffee to go or stay but for a moment all loiter around the crowded dining room. They scope out the equipment or wait for Gagnon to interview them. They chit-chat and question Stefan and Bertrand about what's going on. All the while, increasing the volume of knitwear to an alarming degree within the Achewillow. The longer they stay, the more of them there are, the warmer it gets. The warmer it gets, the more they fiddle and pull at their scarves. Their discomfort becomes my worry, each tug on knitwear a nudge to my fears. I'm about to convince myself that it's all in my imagination, that my sleep-deprived brain is playing tricks on me, fueling my paranoia to dangerous levels. This is an unusual day at the Achewillow. Why wouldn't they stay behind for a few minutes to wonder what's going on? But just as I'm about to settle my fears and go on with the day, she arrives. She doesn't bother walking into the Achewillow, but I see her nonetheless. Her image, mixing in with the reflected crowd of coffee drinkers, tea sippers, and croissant nibblers, remains distinct enough to be seen through the window. Bundled against the cold to almost comical proportions, the thick layers of wool are insufficient to hide Ophelia's disdain. She never returns my stare, observing instead the tight throng of people packed into the Achewillow. Finally, after a long while, she reaches up to her own scarf and gives it a determined, meaningful tug. Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate. Achewillow has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Achewillow for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.